Oh, there we go. Good afternoon. This is Brenda Bartlett, Chair of the Oregon Board of Accountancy Peer Review Oversight Committee. I call this public meeting of our committee to order at 1:04 p.m. on Thursday, January 30th, 2024. This meeting is open to the public and is being held by Zoom and is being recorded. The purpose of the PROC is to provide oversight of the administration of approved peer review programs in order to provide reasonable assurance that peer reviews of Oregon licensees are conducted, reported in accordance with the minimum standards for performing and reporting on peer reviews. PROC will review and submit to the board for approval peer review programs that comply with the minimum standards for performing and reporting on peer reviews. PROC will provide oversight of approved peer review programs to the board. PROC will comply with all other requirements as provided for in OAR 801 Division 050. In the performance of duties as a member of the committee appointed by the board, all committee members will support the mission, goals, and values of the board. Committee members will not disclose confidential information that comes to their attention during the course of carrying out their responsibilities. Requests to any committee member for copies of public information or for a public statement relating to committee or board matters will be referred to the executive director. Liaison board and committee members are expected to attend all meetings and be prepared for the discussion by reading the agenda material prior to the meeting. Committee members are expected to participate in the individual review of applicant files as assigned, providing timely notification to the committee coordinator if a potential conflict of interest exists. Likewise, committee members must provide timely notification to the committee coordinator of any conflict of interest in any matters being discussed. Great. Members of the committee, please remember to mute your microphones during the meeting to avoid unnecessary background noise, and don't use the chat room feature for any discussions. When you want to speak, you may unmute yourself and state your name prior to speaking. Should any technical issues arise, we'll pause the meeting until they're resolved. We'll now take a roll call of all participating members and guests. For any participating guests, please identify yourself at the end. So the committee members are me, Brenda Bartlett, I'm here. John Howell.
Here.
Kim Conway.
Here.
Carrie Ott.
Here.
And Pamela Parks.
Here.
Okay. And then our board staff via Zoom, Andrew Barlow.
Present.
Mary Lynn Varner.
She is out ill.
Okay. I feel that. Martin Pidioni.
Present in the office.
Quinn Stoddard.
Present.
And Nicole Cucking. I'm sorry, I let me know how to pronounce that.
I am here.
Okay. All right, and then we have our OSCPA peer review program representative, Darlene Bowles.
Here via Zoom.
And our board liaison, Haley Lyons.
Here.
Okay, and are there any guests or members of the public present by Zoom or at the office? All right.
Then at the office.
All right, so it sounds like we have no guests. Let's review and adopt the agenda. Any changes to the agenda noted by anybody? Any additions, anything like that? Okay. All right, so I believe that we need to adopt the agenda. So if I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll move we adopt the agenda as presented.
All right.
Second
and
it. This is Carrie. I'll second it.
Thanks, Carrie. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, looks like everybody voted aye, so we are good. All right. This is the time. We do have a time for public comment, but there's nobody here from the public. So can we move on from that? Is that
Yes.
okay? Perfect. All right. So our agenda item number 5 is old business. And this is kind of a blast from the past. We talked a little bit about a consecutive non-pass firm, which was presented first in our November 2023 meeting. We made a decision at our May 2024 meeting to really revisit it. They had a lot of work assigned, action items assigned by the RAB to complete. And Darlene let me know that they still have 2 outstanding corrective actions that are not due until March 31st, 25th.
Yes.
So, I thought probably might be reasonable to talk about this at our May 2025 meeting, since they're not due to complete all of their items. So, that's sort of I just want to make sure we're keeping it on our radar, and, we'll put it on our discussion item for May. And, Darlene, I do want to ask, do I just need to reach out to you to get the information about that prior to the meeting so that we can provide it to the board, to the committee? Sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, do you-
My voice is leaving me as well. Andrew, can you email me the name of the firm again? Because if I think it's who it is, they were discussed, this non-consecutive non-pass was discussed at the January RAB meeting. And I can at least talk about, that piece.
I'm sorry. Were you asking? We don't know the name. Andrew knows.
Andrew, I asked Andrew, if it's who I think it is, it was discussed at the January RAB
Okay.
meeting, and I can give you an update.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Darlene. I was wondering if it was the same one.
Yeah, I don't don't know why I'm losing my voice. I'm sorry. We can always come back to it too if we need to skip around.
Andrew, do you want us just to come back to it?
I've emailed it. I'm not sure how long it'll take to
Oh, okay. Good.
Oh,
go.
okay. How fast do things fly from Salem to Beaverton? Okay, here we go. Okay, nope, not the same firm.
Okay.
So yeah, it'll be.
All right, then
So these corrective actions are due March 31st for this firm, so that will go to the, we do not have a April RAB. So let me see, I don't have my new calendar up here. So it'll be discussed at the May 2025 RAB meeting. We have to wait for all of the corrective actions to come in before we can do our
Right.
consecutive non-pass analysis.
Fortunately, the RAB meeting is after our May meeting. So
Well, if the corrective actions come in earlier,
okay.
then we would get, we would go ahead and it would get on the next RAB meeting. But we don't, I'm looking for the date of that May meeting. We typically,
It's May 16th.
is that when it is? Committee roster, calendar. May 16th, yeah. So if they complete their corrective actions early and they submit them, we would, say they submitted them March 1st, we would have that discussion at the March 21st RAB. We always have to get the RAB packet out 1 week before the meeting, so we're backed up a little bit by that as well. So, yeah.
All right. Well, I'll reach out sometime in April and just see if we can figure out status. it's such a long timeline. It's been so long that I hate to wait. I mean, our meeting's before the RAB meeting in May, so I'd almost maybe chat about moving our May meeting so that we could have that discussion. So we're talking, this is November 2023 that we've been kind of looking through this, so would like to get an update to everybody before like August of 2025. So I'll reach out to you and see where we're at with that. Okay. All right, so next on the agenda is committee member reports. And I missed the last meeting, so I didn't gonna give my report. I'm just gonna be really, really brief because there was something that John had brought up in August about the RAB meeting he attended, and they did sort of talk about that and update it. I think, John, you had requested that we kind of listen in and make a note to update the committee on that issue. And I think the issue, so to refresh everybody's mind, the issue was that they had understood or believed at least that there was a firm-wide decision that revenue is not a fraud risk. And so I think that perhaps the peer reviewer had noted that, and the RAB was relatively uncomfortable with that being a firm-wide decision, because obviously every entity is different. And so what happened, it looks like they sort of clarified that. They went back and maybe talked to the peer reviewer, possibly even talked to the firm. I'm just reading my sketchy notes here. But they said that there was a conclusion, and the RAB, and it wasn't like a conclusion that said every single client does not have a fraud risk, so for revenue recognition. And so they got a little bit more clarification, and the RAB decided that there was no more oversight needed on that issue. And so looks like they accepted some additional CPE and an outside firm to review their next inspection and monitoring. So there might have been some matters for consideration. So I hope that kind of updates you, John. I know you had the concern about it, and just reading my very sketchy notes.
Thank you.
But
Yeah,
the RAB felt good about it in the end, in the conclusion. I think there might have been a little bit of misunderstanding too of the situation. So
yeah, no, I, if the RAB is satisfied with it, I know that consideration was, I know that was given all due consideration at the meeting that I was at, so.
yeah, mine too. So, and then for the rest of that meeting, I don't want to spend too much time. As per usual, there were I think there were 10 different things discussed, a variety of things, and everything was discussed really, really well, thoroughly. And I was very, very happy with the results, so felt good about those. It's really just in conclusion for the RAB meeting. And then I also in November attended the AICPA PRB session. And they spent a lot of time talking about a survey of peer reviewers. I think they had like 200 responses from firms. And I think they said there was 85% of the responses were from firms with 1 to 50 members, or CPAs, I guess. And so they talked a lot about the progress with the new QM standards in small firms not progressing well at all. They're not making progress. So there's some real concern about that. They talked a lot about, documentation, the most common deficiencies, the nature and extent of work. Similar to the prior year that they conducted this survey, they did kind of a root cause analysis, and they said it's really poor or inadequate training and a lack of supervision. There was a lot of discussion about getting more people involved in peer review with much more extensive marketing efforts, simplifying the process. There's a lot of complaints about Prima. And then perhaps offering incentives, which I thought was interesting, like reducing the price of CPE and conferences to peer reviewers. Suggestion to ask to do a survey of people who aren't as working as peer reviewers, why they're not coming into the peer review, why they're not interested. And so a little bit of a discussion of SAS 145 and scalability, which also continues to be a problem area. And it's really I think the most important part of it. They had to miss a lot of stuff because there was a great discussion about some of the stuff that we were talking about. There was on the agenda, but not covered. I just want to give you a compliance update. They ran out of time. There were 6 firms that said they were dropped from the program in Oregon. This was on the agenda. They can enroll, and it was for non-cooperation. And then 1 firm failed to complete corrective action and was terminated from the program. So these are just Oregon firms. So just 1, the 6 others non-cooperation, but they can re-enroll. They weren't terminated, they were dropped. So that's my update there. So we also had a November 22nd RAB that I believe Kim attended.
Yes, I attended that one and the January 17th meeting. And I think overall, my conclusions would be kind of the same as yours, Brenda. They cover the agenda topics and review the firms in great detail and give a lot of attention to detail to the items that are found by the peer reviewers. The January 17th meeting was a little bit interesting in that there was 1 firm that had been on their consecutive non-pass list. And so there was a discussion about whether that warranted a report to the board or not. And the committee talked about it in great length and ultimately decided that it wasn't at a point where it did require that. But I think their thought process and their justification for that seemed completely appropriate based on the circumstances, and they vetted it extensively.
So Andrew, do you know if that has been on our radar, this specific non-consecutive pass? Because we would be, we are required as the prop to take a look at these consecutive non-pass firms.
Searching in Prima, I have not seen a firm in the last 2 meetings that had a consecutive fail or consecutive pass with deficiencies.
Okay.
Darlene, am I getting that wrong? Was that not what the situation was?
You're muted, Darlene, sorry.
Yes, they had at the January meeting, they had a discussion about a firm that had a fail and then a PWD. And they decided not to refer.
Right.
And the fail was first.
Yes.
I believe so, but let me check.
I'm pretty sure it was because I think that factored into their decision that things were getting better,
Getting better.
and that they were improving on the comments that had been received.
Okay. Because we may have already discussed this at a previous one, because there's always that sort of, giving them time to finish their action items before the RAB discusses them again, but I just don't recall. I just want to make sure.
And I think part of it is their next peer review was coming up in 25.
Oh.
So I think in that regard, it is a relatively older one. So we may have seen it from there.
Okay, good. Okay.
But maybe, I guess, Andrew and Darlene, if you guys can just maybe follow up on that and make sure that's one we've heard about, that would be appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay, and then John, were you able to attend the December 20th?
Yes, I got in on the tail end of it. Apparently there was an issue between the OSCPA's invite and my calendar, and we ended up an hour off because of the time change. But it was a fairly routine meeting. There were 14 pass, 2 pass with deficiencies that had previously been passes, and then one fail that had previously been a pass. My main question, the thing that I missed was again about going back to our earlier conversation about the firm with multiple fails, is that was on the agenda to approve their extension from December to March 31 for their corrective action plan. So, and that was the only thing I went back and asked the Darlene about, was to verify that the RAB had approved that to March 31st, which of course now we all know that they did. So other than that, I mean, I think it was a very routine meeting. You know, the fail you know, issues are just things that we're all familiar with. Just very, I think what we would think is very basic things, but it was a firm that had passed in the past. So I think there's always the hope that they get back on target and go back to what they were. So.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for attending and giving us that summary. Our next item of new business is just assigning the upcoming RAB and peer review committee meetings. And I have my little calendar here. Let's see, we have in February a RAB meeting coming up on the 21st. If we have any takers on perhaps attending that one.
This is Carrie. I can do that one, I think.
Okay, thank you, Carrie. And it looks like it's at 9 a.m. this one.
Thank you.
And then we also have the AIC PRB meeting coming up on the 12th of February. And that is at 10 a.m. because it's 1 p.m. Eastern. I will not be able to attend because I'll be out of the office on vacation. So I don't know if anybody's interested in taking that one on.
Yeah, I normally like to go, but I can't on this one for sure because it's right after the budget hearing for the Board of Accountancy in the legislature. So I may not be able to be on quite in time. So I have a hard time committing.
Yeah, I won't be able to either. Do you know, Martin, do they put out a transcript that we could perhaps just review?
That's a great question, but I don't remember how they do that.
Okay,
I
well,
don't know for sure how they do that. Do you know by any chance, Darlene, if they publish stuff?
I don't know off the top of my head either.
okay. Well, we can always get at the agenda if we're not able to have a member attend. Also, if anybody just checks their schedule and sees that would work for them, you know, please let me know.
Okay. If we can't get anybody, then I can simply ask one of my office staff to listen in and just do a summary.
Okay. That would be great. Okay, and then we have one RAB meeting in March on the 21st. If we have any takers. There's none in April, correct me if I'm wrong. Nope. So this would just be the only other one we'd be assigning. Any takers? Okay, I can take that one. All right.
Is there one in May?
There is
Yes.
one in May.
I'll take May.
Okay. Perfect.
And who was taking February?
February's Carrie. And Pamela, you're taking May, and it's May 16th
That works. Thank you.
at 10 a.m. it looks like.
Yeah,
And
the
this
RAB
is-
meetings are, if we're on standard time, they're at 9 o'clock. Because
Oh,
it's
so
7
we must
o'clock.
be switching. Are we
It's 7
switching
o'clock and-
over then?
No, if we are on standard time in Oregon, the meetings are at 9 o'clock because that's
Uh-huh.
7 o'clock in Hawaii. Once we switch to daylight savings time, Hawaii doesn't switch.
Oh.
So then the meetings are at 10 o'clock. so that it's still 7 o'clock Hawaii time.
Okay. yeah,
Otherwise, they
so-
would be having to have RAB meetings at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, that makes sense. Because this one would be during daylight savings time, it looks like, so 10 a.m. And this is the one where we're sort of before the RAB meeting, so I might chat with Martin and Marianne to see if it might make sense to move the May 13th meeting. Does anybody have any issue of maybe moving that to after the RAB meeting? Just so we'll have some information, particularly on that potential consecutive non-pass we've been tracking.
It works better for me because I won't make the 13th.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'll work with Marianne and see if we can come up with a good alternative time that's after the 16th RAB meeting. Okay.
Because the RAB
Thanks,
meeting is,
everybody. Oh, sorry.
the RAB meeting is on the 15th.
16th. So ideally, it would be nice to move our meeting to that next week of the 19th, if possible. Okay. All right, so item C is the we talked our 2024 proc report. I don't want to get into this in too much detail. I think you guys have had it for a while because we tabled it in November when I was out. But I would just like a little feedback if anybody has any objections or changes or things. I specifically think that I had highlighted yellow items to make sure that those were things you paid attention to. Otherwise, I think we'll take the draft and finalize it and get it out to the board. No comments? No.
I think my only comment was more I just couldn't quite remember. Was it really earlier this year that we kind of terminated the Oregon program, or was that last year?
So last year we started the process. This year the OSCPA made it final.
Official? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, that took them a little bit of time.
Okay.
I'm
Crazy
correct
how
on that,
time
Darlene,
goes.
right?
It was terminated February of 2024.
Okay. Perfect.
All right. Awesome. So I'll work on that.
Thanks for putting that together too, Brenda.
Yeah. All right. So item D, talking a little bit about recruitment, also vice chair selection. It sounds like that might have been tabled as well. So I've kind of got that as the first order of business. We can table this until we have new members. I know that we've got a couple members. Well, we've got a member leaving, and then we had somebody who was already, who was done last year at the end. So we're down a couple members. But if anybody is interested in nominating themselves for vice chair, I am certainly not going to nominate any of you and put you in an uncomfortable position. But if anybody's interested in the position, I think we could entertain a nomination. Otherwise, we could table this. I think we've got a lot of recruiting to do to get a few more members. So would love any kind of discussion or feedback on that. Okay, I think I'm going to table it at this time. And Martin, can you just give us just kind of an overview of the committee members leaving?
Leaving?
Uh-huh. And timeline. I don't remember the timing. I think it was Michael or not Michael.
Well, I know that Kim, I don't know, Kim, if you want to talk about that for a quick moment? Because I think that you're the one with probably one of the bigger transitions coming on and giving us a lot of grace by even being here today. So do you want to just take that on and update everybody?
Yes, I have resigned from the committee, but I've told Martin that kind of I'm willing to stay on as the transition and kind of until new members get kind of put in place and some of those holes filled. I know that with David stepping off too, that was kind of 2 members right at once. So happy to help with the transition, but yes, kind of on a stepping away plan.
And I just want to say it's not because of anything I said to Kim. She had a professional.
No, Martin, you've been great to work with.
Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. So what are your thoughts? So you're okay coming to meetings, maybe the next meeting, and in the meantime, we should be trying to work on some recruitment, or is this kind of your intent to be this your last meeting, or what are your sort of thoughts on that?
Either is fine. I can come in May too if that's helpful. If you have new members in place by then, I definitely don't need to. So kind of willing to play it by ear.
Okay, great. Let me make a note. Well, we certainly appreciate all your input on the board and attending all the meetings. So
Thank you.
appreciate it. Yeah. Okay. And then it was David who's leaving, and then so I want to talk about recruitment, and Andrew filled me in a little bit about some discussion last meeting. I think there was some discussion about maybe ensuring that we have a good covering of smaller firms in an outlying geographical area. Andrew provided the licensing database of the 42 people who checked the box for interest in committees. And of those 42, there were members in Wasco, Union, Coos, Douglas, and Jackson counties. So certainly some rural counties. But I also kind of wanted to just bring up, I think we do have some, I mean, I'm in Deschutes, which is, I think, considered rural. And Pamela, aren't you in Clatsop? Am I wrong? Is it Carrie?
No, I'm in Clatsop County out on the coast.
Right. That's where I was born.
County, which is pretty rural.
Where?
Harney County, Eastern
Okay.
Oregon.
So see, we have a lot of rural representation. So I don't think that we necessarily need a I don't know. I'm just in my mind, I'm thinking, well, maybe we have traditionally had a lot of the I-5 corridor representation, but maybe we've lost some of that. And so I don't think that we have to, necessarily look for a rural. Would really like to get a good cross section of the state. So I don't know how y'all feel about that, but I just wanted to bring that up because I knew it sounded like it was a bit of some discussion last meeting. So I think
Brenda, I might almost even suggest the opposite. I kind of feel like with David rolling off, like we're missing big four larger firm
that's what I think.
representation.
Yeah, that's what I said. I maybe did not say that well. I feel like we need some bigger firms. Yeah. And I think the discussion maybe last meeting was maybe we needed some rural, and I was thinking, I think we've got a lot of rural right now. So so sorry, I don't think I was clear on that, but yeah, I'm in agreement. I think we need some of the bigger firms, and they're usually located in the I-5 corridor. So
yep.
So yeah, so that's what I think too.
Okay.
I think we need to make sure we've got a good cross section. So
Brenda, just a question.
uh-huh.
We have a statutory requirement. I think we went through this earlier in earlier meetings on the committee, but there's a statutory requirement that at least a couple of our committee members have to be eligible to be peer reviewers, even if they aren't peer reviewers. Do you recall that discussion?
Yeah.
So I think that in terms of recruiting people, it would be nice to have more. I mean, what's kind of, to me, I think, and it sort of bothers me about the peer review rules is that to be a team captain, I think you have to be a partner or a shareholder in a firm.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, a real narrow view of life. Because in the bigger firms, that could be a problem, even getting those people to serve. much less, senior managers and managers in the A&A area. And then also just, in the people with the large regional firms and the big four firms that I've talked to, most of them have absolutely no idea about peer review. I mean, they're focused on their areas of industry specialty and audit specialty and stuff like that. And they're like, oh yeah, we have, I always want to say internal affairs, like that's like the police, but they have practice people that do that stuff, usually at their national offices. And so at the local offices, there might be an audit partner that coordinates that with the national office, but it's a little problematic. So I think that that's the main thing, because I think that only, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seems to me that only at the present time, you and I are the only ones that are actual shareholders or partners in firms.
Well, and I think that remember the Board of Accountancy the board actually gave us sort of a broader definition of that from what they believed that to be. And it was that people just needed to be eligible, but not to have to be a team captain. So that opens it up a little bit to people who could just be on a team members.
Oh, okay.
And also
wouldn't
a
have to
partner.
be equity
This is Carrie.
partners.
So I'm actually a partner here also, so.
Okay, great.
Awesome.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so I think that they wanted, I just, when we had this discussion, and Martin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was my understanding, is they were, number one, they had a couple things. They said the first was that they didn't have to be practicing peer review, just be eligible. And then the
Yes.
other was they didn't have to be a team captain. And that really opens us up to other members who can be eligible to be on a team.
Yes, I do believe that accurately reflects the discussion. I'm slightly embarrassed because it's a public meeting if I say what I cannot remember is that if these are our rules or if these are AICPA peer review program rules.
This is actually, I think it was in the Board of Accountancy because it's in the OAR 801. And
Okay.
we asked the board to help us interpret that as we recruit new members.
Okay, that's where
And
that came from.
they interpreted it in that manner for us.
Okay, well, there's a little bit of an overlap between this and I believe there's one other agenda item later that may touch on is there a need to kind of tweak our peer review oversight, our PROG rules based on something else that came out as a change on the AICPA program side. And there's kind of inside there is a larger question of, are there other things we need to do rules wise? So I guess since we just talked about our own rules here, is this, notwithstanding kind of the help from interpretation from the board, does this rise to the level where this committee says, should we take a look at this and kind of tweak that language beyond the interpretation? Is that a topic that this committee wants to take up? I'm not suggesting we should, but I know that we're going to have to discuss if this committee wants to make certain tweaks to our PROG rules, right? So since we're doing, having that on the agenda a little bit later anyway, I might as well just ask that question, at least in this particular context.
Sure. I mean, Martin, I'll be quite honest here. I don't even know that we have PROC rules. We're following the administrative rules that are laid out in OAR 801.
That's what I mean.
Right, but I don't know that we have the power to change those rules, do we?
But, well, the board does, right? So the question is the PROC going to make requests to make updates to the rules? Because then we can take that into the board process to update our rules, right? Because the rules of the board are written by the Board of Accountancy. So if the PROC says, hey, we want to have updates in in that section of the rules that run the PROC, then we usually do that at the request of PROC. Okay. Right? If PROC says, hey, maybe we need to update this, maybe we need to change this, right? So the PROC doesn't do the rules process, but we definitely want to make sure that we're responsive to PROC requests. If the PROC says, hey, we may want to tweak this, or we need to tweak this because of some change that's going on, then we definitely want to hear about that.
So, just for informational purposes, I guess, I also am a partner with my firm, but also I think that, I don't know if we need to necessarily change anything, but I am curious what the procedure is for looking at those 42 people who are interested in like trying to recruit them to the committee. Who does that?
That's a great question. So there is actually no super defined process or procedure. And quite frankly, we're responding to a request from the committee for the committee to be a little bit more involved in helping to find folks that I can then, essentially informally assist. I quite frankly am the one who mostly works right now directly with the chair on figuring out who we should reach out to and make the calls and kind of go to folks, but there isn't like a super defined process that we have to follow, right? So quite frankly, this is actually a little bit of new territory for us, and it may actually be very exciting and new territory for us to have a committee a little bit more involved in saying, hey, let's look at who's in the pipeline and what makes sense. I actually think it's super healthy, right? I couldn't look you in the eye and tell you, oh, that's the process for it, because we actually don't have a process for it. But that also gives us degrees of freedom. So I'm actually really happy we're having that conversation.
Well, is there just as a matter of, what we were talking about before, is there any feeling on the committee right now from anybody that we would want to change, kind of that statutory requirement for eligibility? Because it seems now that the board has interpreted for us, to me, that it's quite, it seems reasonable to me that somebody has, at least one person on our committee has that peer review eligibility, since that's what we're doing. So I can't think of any changes that I would want to add. And I'm with Pamela. That was going to be my question, is how do we do this? How do we look at these 42 people and try to reach out to them? Anybody else have any kind of feelings about changing that, who we would be recruiting in terms of eligibility? Doesn't sound like it.
So I go both ways on that. I feel like on some level, the board's interpretation is sufficient for us, but at the same time, there's going to be a point where we roll off and, there's new members that are going to have this same conversation. And has there been a way that we've memorialized that it's a reference point for them? Or is it almost easier or better just to change the rules so that they're clear from the start?
So
yeah, that's a really good point. I think in the pipeline for me has been trying to do a handbook for new members of the PROC, right? To just memorialize all of these things that we fleshed out in the last 18 months. But I think that's a really good point. But we definitely can memorialize that for new members, but I just don't know the effort behind changing an OAR, and if it's worthwhile, if it's something that we're really uncomfortable with, as opposed to just making sure that we pass down our information to new members. Haley.
Is my mic? Oh, there we go. Am I working now? So just to jump in here for a second, the actual language in the OAR around this specifically says at least one member shall have an active license to practice public accountancy in this state and shall have current experience in accounting and auditing, quality control practices, and be an AICPA qualified peer reviewer. So it doesn't say they have to be so to me that feels kind of clear or fairly clear. But I think what you're suggesting maybe is that the adjustment would be that they don't have to be an active qualified peer reviewer.
I think that our question initially to them was, do they have to be working as a peer reviewer?
Right.
Like, did they, within the last whatever X amount of time, did they participate in a peer review? Because that was what was really unclear to us. What does that mean exactly? Because you can be qualified as a peer reviewer by taking the course and having your resume in and all of that kind of thing. Whatever else, I can't remember all the rules off the top of my head, but you can be qualified, but just not working in that area, not being a peer reviewer this time. And so that was our question. And then I think our other question was regarding whether it has to be eligible to be a team captain or not, because that then requires you to be an equity partner.
Sure.
And that would preclude a lot of people. So that was our other, do they mean team captain or do they mean being able to be on the team? So in that sense, the team captain piece, I think that's a little unclear.
Well, I mean, it says an AICPA qualified peer reviewer. So the fact that it doesn't, I guess that's what I'm kind of coming back to. It's like, that's what it, so if we want it to be more prescriptive to say, actually does have to be a team captain or actually does have to be an active practicing, I could see going that way, but it's pretty like open-ended and maybe should be up to the discretion of, the truth of the matter though, is we also just need to get people that have some iota of interest and qualification to serve on this committee as well. And so we can certainly entertain like the changing of the rule if we need to clarify it. I guess to me, it's like we're giving the bottom, like the bare minimum.
Yeah, I would be most comfortable if the rule said eligible to be an AICPA peer reviewer. If that was actually the wording of the rule is eligible, because that's the interpretation that we're following now. And I'd just be a lot more comfortable if the plain reading of the regulation said what we're doing.
How do you become, this is an education point for me. So can you be a qualified peer reviewer and be ineligible to be one? Or not? I just don't know. Or do you like you could say like, well, I determined my own qualifications because I think I did these things, and the AICPA could come in and be like, no, you didn't, or whatever. So to me they're one and the same, but I appreciate the perspective. And happy to entertain.
You definitely have to take that course. So I guess.
So I did talk to Jenny about this.
That's a really good question.
Found out that I did not set this up.
But I guess maybe the point is like we're making the point by having this conversation is that there is there is confusion around the language. So maybe we do.
Folks, could I ask, we have a whole bunch of folks that are not on mute and we're getting a lot of background noise from another meeting that's running.
Because it is it is a large amount of funds. She said that we could probably do the first.
All right. Well, I think that was a good discussion. If since we do have some upcoming potential tweaks to rules coming up, it might be something that we keep on our radar and talk about rather than a one-off, which it's a pretty, I think, maybe minor thing to most of us, that it could be combined in to lend some clarity to that. Combined in with any other changes we have to make due to this NASBA change that I'm still not 100% familiar with. But if everybody's good with that, I think that we can talk maybe a little bit more about how mechanically we get this recruitment going. Okay. So Martin, help me out. What are your thoughts on how you could assist us on this? I've seen the list. Can we disseminate the list? Can we, how should we think about that? And also, do you contact them? I can't remember how I got contacted. It's just not in my memory. And Martin, you're on mute. I don't know if you're talking to me or not. Andrew, you look like you're talking, but you're on mute. I don't know if you're talking to us.
Martin, you'll need to hit the unmute mics in the middle of the table, probably.
try now.
You're back.
Testing. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep, you're
I
good.
don't know how I got muted. There's, on occasion staff likes to play with me and say you talk too much and they hit my mute button, but I don't know how to undo it sometimes, so. With respect to the recruitment question, I want to just directly address what you asked about kind of how can we most kind of engage next steps easiest. And I think that what makes sense to me is we had a really valuable discussion just now around where the committee's at around, okay, we don't need more rural perspective. We need we need not a super large, but at least larger or large firm, good with I-5 corridor, which is probably going to be an overlap. And I think the logical next step is to take those 43-ish names, right? See who fits that criteria. And then quite frankly, internally at the staff level, we need to figure out if any of those folks that fit the criteria even are still interested, because we don't even know the age of when they checked the box, right? They could have checked it 6 months ago. They could have checked it, they could have checked it 18 months ago. So I think we need to do some further vetting on the inside in terms of are folks even still interested, reach out to them, not make them promises, right? But then I can have a conversation with, quite frankly, once I know that they fit the committee's criteria, then quite frankly, the easiest thing for me to do just to keep the ball rolling is to then have a direct conversation with Haley, because Haley hasn't acknowledged this yet, and I probably should have helped with this at the beginning of this meeting, but Haley's actually sitting here with more than one hat on. I was trying to figure out if we could have her on the Zoom meeting, like on 2 screens, right? One with her proc hat on and one with her new board chair hat on, right? Because Haley just stepped into the board chair role, so it's actually Haley who's gonna have to kind of take what kind of for the board are kind of one of the powers that are really reserved for the board chair is to actually make the appointments to committees, right? So Haley's gonna be the one. And if you're okay with a streamlined process, right, which is normally what we do without the committees, like we try to figure out who may be good, kind of get some background information, large firm, small firm, whatever, like in geographic balance, get that to the chair, and then we have the conversation, and the chair kind of makes the call, yeah, let's go with XYZ individual, Martin, reach out to them, talk to them, are they still interested, are they, are they solid? Are they, talk with them about the committee stuff. I can do the rest of that directly with Haley, as long as you feel comfortable that I have enough input from the committee around what your criteria are. Because right now it's really about, can you find somebody from a larger firm and we're okay with I-5 corridor.
Yeah, and we'd love it if they had, I would love it if they were actively as a peer reviewer. That would be some really lovely insight for our committee. But
Well,
anybody else have anything to add to that?
Personally, Brenda, I completely agree with that. And so I have that in the back of my mind also of like, that would be ideal. That would be like, if we can get that, be amazing.
Exactly. Anybody have anything to add to that? So just to give staff direction of kind of vetting that list. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Well, that's
Okay.
awesome. I just want to say thank you as well, because I actually, I felt first of all embarrassed that I had to miss the last proc except for the first 10 minutes. That's the first committee meeting I've ever missed. And so I missed the whole discussion around the recruitment piece, right? And I was actually really pleased that came up, because I think it's a super healthy sign that the committee wants to get kind of, be part of that discussion as opposed to that happening outside the committee. So I was pretty excited.
So E. Okay, is this the NASBA thing, Martin, that I'm just not even my brain is so fuzzy right now.
Yes,
Okay.
This is the one, and actually Darlene, fair warning to you, this is actually one where, even though this came to us as a NASBA announcement, right? It's really about NASPA alerting us to a change in the AICPA peer review program, right? And so there's kind of a couple of kind of follow-ons to that. One is, I think, the item that's on the agenda for, can we hear briefly from, the OSCPA side, kind of what that means in terms of you implementing that stuff. Is this like ho-hum? Is it a big deal? Whatever thoughts you can provide. And then we know internally from a very quick review with council that we will need to change at least one reference in our rule by the end of the year because of that change that's coming down. That's coming down the pike. But I also, quite frankly, am probably the worst person in the room to try to explain what exactly it is that's changing. And I don't know if you, Darlene, are willing to take that on, if you've had a chance to dig into that a little bit.
Well, this has been on the radar for a couple years now. The AICPA has said quality management, all firms have to have a quality management documentation in place. If they don't, it'll be an automatic pass with deficiency rating on their report. They have until December 15th, 2025 to get that implemented. And so it's not anything that the Oregon Society specifically implements, but because it's at the firm's peer review level. I mean, the firm is the one that's required to have the quality management documentation. And this affects firms of all sizes. So, the sole practitioner CPA on up to, very large firms. And what we have been doing as a society is just trying to get the information out there, because when I was at the last peer review conference, I can't remember where I was, but anyway, there's a lot of firms that at that time, and that was back in August, there were a lot of firms, particularly smaller ones, that weren't even aware that they needed to get this document. So the AICPA has been trying to get as much information out. We have, as a society ourselves, a state society, have been trying to get stuff out. So we're putting it in our newsletter, it's in our magazine, it's on our website, just trying to hit, the firms with as much as we can, just repetitive. We have courses that we offer that kind of walk you through how to create this document. The AICPA also has a whole dedicated section on their website that basically you can just follow along, and here's how you implement and get this document in order. So it's a major undertaking for firms. But so that's what we've been doing as a society, is just trying to help get the word out. And the technical reviewers and the peer reviewers, like if reviewers are doing a review right now for someone whose peer review isn't after December 15th, but they're just trying to let the firms know, hey, next time we come around for your next peer review, you're going to have to show that this document is in place. So everybody's just trying to get the word out and be as helpful as we can to the firms to get this document in place.
And PAs are included in that as well, right?
If you're required to have a peer review, then yes, you need to have the document. And there's like multiple levels. I mean, I can't recite all of the sections off the top of my head, but there's definitely specific sections to it.
Yeah, every firm that's subject to peer review is currently required to have a peer review quality control document that basically explains how you cover along the quality process. And that's going to be replaced by a quality management standards document, basically, so the term control isn't really being used anymore as opposed to management standards. So there's a lot of terminology changes. And what it really means is it means probably a complete rewrite of your quality document. The old one's out, and the new one's in, and then there's some additional pieces to implement, because they've added a few things, you know, a few components that what we were thinking of the components of system of quality control. There's some new components called information and communication. I think that that's really covering your bases and understanding what those mean and how you document those in the firm, I think is really important. Most firms went through this thing this past year, just in the information area, of having to have a WISP, you know, which is for IRS purposes. And so I think that this is the information piece in this is very similar. How do you do things? How does your information tech work? Where are things stored? You know, so it's you're doing all these things, but you just have to write out in your quality management document that you're doing them and how you do them. So there's a lot of materials. There's a lot of materials online for that. And I think that, you know, we use, a lot of people use PPC. So if you use PPC, you buy PPC's Guide to Quality Control, it will have a draft of a new, you know, quality management document that you could, it'll have a draft, it'll have a recommended one, large firm, small firm, sole proprietorship. We use CCH Knowledge Coach, and the same sort of thing. I mean, we would probably start with their base document because that's what all of our A&A documentation is based on, is on Knowledge Coach. And so we would start with, you know, CCH's document and kind of work through that. So, but, you know, really the important thing is to get the information out to firms that do have peer reviews that this has to be done. I mean, it's not, as Darlene explained, it's not optional. You're going to get a pass with deficiencies. And that's not anything new. You would always get a pass with deficiencies if your quality control document, your existing quality control document, wasn't updated to whatever is standard number 8, right? You had to be updated to standard number 8. So this isn't anything new there at all, but it's, you know, it's different terminology in some ways to people, but again, it's bringing this quality management standards idea so that what is in peer review and quality management standards is using the same terminology and sort of the same structure as other things in the accounting and auditing body of professional literature. So it's, I mean, it makes sense to me, but it's just one more thing that we have to do. You know, I was going to tell the group, this is I'm undergoing, I believe it's my 12th peer review. So when you count 3 years times 12, I've been doing this a long, long time, and I hope this is my last. I'm really looking forward to this being my last peer review. So anyway, but we have to. I'll be on board. We're going to update our document. We're going to have the new quality management document replace our existing quality control document. Probably, well, definitely before the end of this year. Probably right after peer review and after busy season, when we get done, just going to sit down and study it, just do it, have it in place, and have it implemented. It's on the agenda.
Yeah, there's a lot of resources online. I mean, I'm just looking at the AICPA's website. System of Quality Control Practice Aid for a sole practitioner firm, System of Quality Control Practice Aid, small to medium-sized firms. So there's a lot of templates that you can use, but they have to be personalized to your own practice. Obviously, if a peer reviewer comes along and they just see some template, and it's not gonna pass. You have to actually say what you're doing and who's responsible for meeting that criteria. So, but lots of resources out online and everywhere.
Thanks, Darlene and John. Appreciate it. So we also have on here the staff update on the rule change that's necessary. Did you want to address that, Andrew or Martin?
I thought Martin had just done that. Just one moment. I had closed my window.
Yeah, it says in the NASBA thing that we were given, boards may wish to review their statutes and rules in coordination with their legal counsel for any definitions or references to quality control or quality control standards.
So
So that's I think where it comes
Okay.
in.
Got it.
Yeah, and that's essentially was done almost immediately. So I forwarded this over to board counsel, and without getting into a lot of details, she basically said the only thing that it appears at first glance that we will not change is that there's one particular reference in our rule that will have to change for sure at minimum. So we know we have to open up the proc rules just at least on that super technical level. But that also, quite frankly, goes right back to the earlier discussion, which is, you know, we don't have to do it at this proc, but it would be really good if we do it at no later than the next agenda for the proc meeting, is to really have kind of a focused discussion with the committee on, does the committee see any need for tweaks to the Oregon administrative rules? So not the statutory framework, that's a whole other thing. But the rules framework that we have for PROC, because then, you know, we can gobble it up, number one, in one package saying, here's what the committee would like as updates, right? And then quite frankly, the second half of this year is going to become phenomenally busy for the board in terms of rulemaking, right? And it will be really nice, instead of doing another separate rulemaking, to then figure out, based on the input from this committee, how we can integrate the feedback from this committee in the overall rules activity that the board's going to have to undertake, because this will be a very busy fall for us. And, you know, we're happy to accommodate it. It's just a coordination issue and a timing issue.
Okay. Well, then I think that we all, as committee members, maybe have a little bit of homework between now and May to read through that OAR again, and just see if there's anything that pops out at you that we should discuss. We already know that we maybe want to talk about the peer review member requirement and whether that should be a little bit more clarified, or whether it's good as it is because it's broad and allows us a little bit of, you know, flexibility, or, you know, whatever. So yeah, if we could do that between now and the May meeting. I know all of the tax folks, good luck with that. I'm sorry, but yeah, I don't have to do tax, so I got a little time. Okay. And then I think our last agenda item was really just reiterating the 2025 meeting schedule. But after I put this on the agenda, I realized I think we all probably have them on our calendars. But so it's a little redundant. But I am kind of interested in changing that May 13th meeting, because I like the idea of meeting after the wrap. So I'll work with Andrew and Marianne and Martin on that. So. All right, and then I'm not going to go through the list of tabled upcoming agenda items, but they will. Let's see if there's anything that needs attention. Yeah, so A through D, those are going to be things that we're going to get on our May agenda, except for A. That's really, I think, Martin, I think that is probably a longer time frame,
Yeah.
CPE. And then if we have any non-consecutive or consecutive non-pass firms, that'll always be on the agenda if we have them identified. Yeah.
The only thing
So,
I was going to say is I think that I was the one that raised upcoming agenda item D, and I believe I'm going to withdraw that. I'd like to withdraw that from the agenda. I don't. People can make their own conclusion as to whether that is the responsibility of the PROC. I don't believe that it is. I believe it's the responsibility of the Board of Accounting, and I'm going to approach that in a different way.
okay.
So I think it needs to be removed from the PROC upcoming agenda items.
Okay.
I'm going to direct that directly to the Board of Accountancy. I'm almost done with this being the CPA thing, but I'm very unimpressed with what I see up there.
All right, does anybody have anything else they'd like to comment or add to a future agenda or discuss before we adjourn? Well, as always, I thank everybody for giving up your time for this. I find it to be fascinating and important work. So I'm very happy that we're all taking the time to do this. So if there's nothing further, I'm going to adjourn the Oregon Board of Accountancy Peer Review Oversight Committee at 2:15 p.m.
Perfect.